31. Okay. All right, so what we're learning how to do is we're learning how to do trial and error, factoring trinomials. Okay, all right? So when we do this, the first thing you do is you want to look and see if we have any common factors. Now this is important. If you have a 10, 7, and 12, is there any number that goes into 10, 7, and 12 at the same time? No, the only number is 1, right? So there is no common factor there, but you want to check. Could you take a z out of this? No, how come? Because there's no z with the 12. Good. So that means that what you're ready to do is just trial and error and go for it, okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to have you make a chart on this. When you're doing your homework, you don't have to do this. I'm just trying to show you a strategy that kind of gets you organized. So the first term is the 10z to the 4th. Okay, so the possible things that multiply to give that, now this time are going to be 1z to the 2nd and 10z to the 2nd. I could tell, you know, in teaching sometimes students forget when you multiply variables, what do you do to the exponents? You add them. If you don't know that, you won't understand factoring, so that's an important part. What's the other possibility? 2z to the 2nd and 5z to the 2nd, like that. Okay, so those are your possibilities. And then for the last term, we're just going to look at all the possible numbers that multiply to give 1 and 12, or to give 12. So I just told you, one of them's 1 and 12, one of them's 2 and 6, the other one is 3 times 4. So it's a good idea when you do trial and error to just write down the possibilities. Okay, and that's the way I'm going to focus on doing most of these problems, is this way. So then we're going to draw two parentheses, and then we're just going to trial and error it. Now what I said last time, and this is important, if you look at the 3 numbers in your problem, they're all close together, aren't they? You don't have a number that's like way off, like 1,000 or something. They're all relatively close. So do you remember what I told you to do on that kind of a problem? Pick close. Close means 2 and 5 are closer together than 1 and 10. 3 and 4 are closer together than 1 and 12 or 2 and 6. So you're going to try those. I don't know if they're going to work. And the other thing I want to stress on this, you can't do this problem in your head. You cannot. You have to write something on your paper. So let's just put the 2z squared there and the 5z squared there. Let's put the 3 and 4 there, and let's see if it's going to work or not. Okay? So what you do now is you're wanting to see if you can get the inner and outer term to add up to negative 7z squared. So when I put this together, that multiplies to give 15z to the 2nd. This multiplies to give 8z to the 2nd. And what we're trying to get is negative 7z to the 2nd. Tell me, can I make 15 and 8 add up to negative 7? Yes. Something's got to be negative. What has to be negative? The 15. Okay, there you go. So I just happened to be a lucky guesser. I got it right the first time. So what that means is, if you're getting a negative 15, that's got to be negative. Okay, if you're trying to get an 8, that's that outer term, that's got to be positive. So that right there would be the factored answer to the problem right there. You're done, and then you could FOIL that, and then you could go through and check that. Yes?
How do you remember what side to put the negative and the positive on?
Okay, look at where that comes from. You know that you're trying to get a negative 15. So what, see, that's already a positive 5. Okay. Since it's already positive 5 in that set, that forces that to be negative. Okay, so just look at where it came from. That's a good question, because that's one thing that students mess up on a lot on the problem. Okay, let's check this one. And what I was trying to get you to do on the quiz today was to check your answer, because you know you're right, okay? You FOIL, so we'll want to make sure we do that, okay? So if you do the first term, you're just doing 2z to the 2nd times 5z to the 2nd. That's 10z to the 4th. You have that. The outer term, you're doing this times this. So that is plus 8z to the 2nd, like that. Your inner term, we already got that. That's negative 15z to the 2nd. And then your outer term, you're doing 2 times 4. So that's going to be plus 8. Hold on. What am I doing? First, hold on. I'm all messed up. I don't know what's wrong with me here. Okay, so we got the first and outer. Okay, now if we go to the inner, that's what I was messing up on. The inner is negative 15z to the 2nd, and then negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. So see, that's the FOIL. Now, does that match what we started with?
Yeah.
It does, because these are like terms. So you would have 10z to the 4th minus 7z to the 2nd minus 12, and that matches the problem. So that's what you do. You can tell that you're right on that when you do that. So what I'm trying to get you to do is do trial and error. Okay? All right, is there any questions about that? Okay, now I'm going to start you with this one. I'm going to do like this one together. I think I'll have you guys, I'm going to do number 32, then I'm going to have you do 34, then I'll go back to 33 just because it's a little different. So let's go ahead and go through this one together. Okay, so the first term, last term, you want to start that way. So the first term, you want to write all of the possible things that multiply to give 12x to the second. Those possibilities are 1 times x and 12x, 2x and 6x, and then 3x and 4x like that. Okay? Now for the last term, what's the possibilities? 1 and 4, 2 and 2, right? So write that. Don't forget about the t. You'd have 1t times 4t, and then 2t times 2t like that. Okay? All right, has everybody got that? Okay, let's try close again. I don't know if it'll work, but those numbers are fairly close. We may have to adjust it, but let's just go ahead and start with this and see where that takes us. And we may have to play with it a little bit. Okay, so if I do this, I'm going to go ahead and draw my 2 parentheses, and I'm going to put in the 3x and the 4x in the first slot. Then I'm going to put the 2t and the 2t in the next slot like this. Once you practice this a little bit, you'll begin to where you can just write it down and say, oh, that's not going to work. Okay, let's see if this works. So if you did this, this is going to be 8xt, and then this outside term is going to be 6xt. What are we trying to make that add up to? That middle term. Is that going to work? No. Okay, now here's what you do if it doesn't work. Okay, you could switch the 2t and 2t, but that wouldn't make any difference, right? They're the same number. So what you're going to have to do on this is you're going to have to give up on that. It's not going to work. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the first term alone. So I've got 3x and 4x, and I'm just going to start over again. Now I'm going to work with the 1t and the 4t, like that. Okay, and then we'll see if we can get this one to work out. So I'm going to put this like this. I'm going to put a 4t there, and I'm going to put a 1t there. Okay, I'm just going to try it that way and see what happens. Okay, so now let's try again. So that would be 16xt. Okay, that's going to be 3xt. All right, now we're shooting for negative 3xt. What do you think about that possibility? We found it, see? You can make 16 and 3 add up to negative 13 if 16 is negative and then the 3 is positive, like that. Okay, so the 16 comes from this multiplication, so that's negative. That gives you negative 16. The outer term has to be positive, so that's a positive there. There's your answer to your problem. Okay, now you just don't want to put the 1t there. I'm doing that to emphasize more than anything. You can just put a t there, then you got it. Okay, it took me 2 times to get that. All right, so you have to trial, and to me, the whole key to learning how to do this good is writing that on your paper, right there. So it's very clear what combination you're looking for. All right, does that make any sense? Okay, I have no idea. Let's try this one. I'm going to have you guys do 34. Just do that one yourself. And then I'll go back and do 33, just because it's a little different. We did that same kind of problem last time, but I want to review that one. So make your chart. When you're doing your homework, you don't have to do that. I want you to do that in class, just so you're kind of organizing and thinking correctly here. And then we'll see, give you a few minutes to see if you can find the right combination here. Now, while you're working on that, I'm going to go ahead and pass out the 5-7. I guess I'd pick close on this one too. It's hard to tell though. It's always just almost always a good starting place is in the middle and see where you get. Okay, has anybody got it yet? How many people have got it? Okay, well, let's just plug it in. Let's see what we got. Okay, did close work? That's my next question.
Yeah.
Okay, is that what you did? That's what I almost always do, is just start close. So let's go with those and see what happens. Okay, can you see okay? Do I need to dim the light?
Yeah, I need to.
Okay, let me go back and I'll dim that light real quick.
Sorry about that.
There we go. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try 5z. And then 5z like that. Now let's try 2 and 3. Let's see what happens. Now again, the key on this is just draw this visual. See, that's a 10z when you multiply it. That is a 15z when you multiply that. What are you trying to get?
5z.
Positive 5z to the second. So we found it, didn't we? Okay. That means the 15 has to be positive, the 10 has to be negative. Now, where did the 10 come from? This is the question students always have. The 10 came from there, so that has to be negative, right? The 15 came from the outer, so the 3 has to be positive, and then you're done. Okay, so it goes negative, positive like that. Okay, problem done. You could FOIL it and check it and verify with absolute certainty that you're right. So that wasn't too hard. Yes?
Where do you get the z cubed? 25z cubed?
Oh, that's a second right there? Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah.
That's a second power. I didn't write it very good.
Okay.
That right there should be a what you're doing is you're breaking it up into second power times second power. Don't use the cube.
Do you have to include that in the...
And then this one right here should be square and square like that. Now we're good. Now we're squared away. Okay, I think. All right? All right, we good? Okay, yes.
So if you wrote it the other way around, it has to be.
Yes, now what I want to mention is if you wrote it this way, if you wrote 5z plus 3 and 5z minus 2, that's also correct. But one thing you do have to do is make sure that you have the negative with the 2 and the plus with the 3. But you can always have these things backwards. Okay? There's always 2 ways to write the answer. Okay, let's go back up to this one right here. Now this one right here you can actually do, you don't really have to do a chart on this. I'm going to go ahead and do it though. And I'm just going to leave that as the first term and that as the second term. Okay, like that. So for the first term we could have 1 times 15 or we could have 3 times 5. For the last term we only have one possibility. And if we have that, then we don't really have to do trial and error. So what I'm going to do on this one is same idea. Okay, draw 2 parentheses. Okay, that's got to be x and x. So that's nice if you only have one possibility. And then this one, let's go with the 3 and 5 and do that. Okay, so what we'd have there is 3 and 5. And then just take the same approach. This inner term from FOIL is 5x. The outer term from that is 3x. What are you trying to get?
Negative.
Is that going to work? Yep, 2 negatives, right? Okay, you know that if you add 2 negatives, you get a negative. So there's your answer right there. Okay? Now you could also write that as 5 minus x, 3 minus x. So those are your 2 possibilities on that I want to show you. Okay, does that look okay? The combination? Okay. Once you practice this, students usually get down their trinomials pretty good. Okay, so we'll get there. Okay, so I'm going to do just a couple other things to finish this up here. And what we're doing with this now, and this is super important, so pay attention to this. Okay, you have 18, I'm going to do this kind of at the side, 18, 78, and I've got 60. Okay, does that have a common factor? Absolutely, they're all even numbers, so they all divide by 2, right? Okay, and there may be something bigger. Now, you can use your calculator to find out a couple of things that help you with this a little bit. I know they all divide by 2. Now, one thing I'm going to do on this is I'm going to go ahead and divide it by 2, and that's going to be 9. That's going to be what, 40, is that 40? No, 30, 39, okay, sorry. Okay, and then that's going to be 30 like that, okay? Now, it's not right. 2 is not the biggest factor, and I want to see if you guys catch this. Can you think of a number that goes into 9, 39, and 30 at the same time? There is something. 3. They all divide by 3, okay? 39 divides by 3 13 times. That may be one that you don't know. So, really what happens is 2 times 3. The 3 that I could take out of those would give 6. So I'm going to start over again, and I'm just going to try 6 and see if that's the biggest. And I'm going to use my calculator to help me a little bit. So 18 divided by 6 is 3. 60 divided by 6 is 10. And then 78 divided by 6, I don't know what that is, so I'll just put that in. What did we get there?
13.
Yeah, 13. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so we got that. All right, now look at 3. That's a 13. Kind of writing sloppy here. Okay, so 3 and 13 and 10. Okay, is there any number that goes into 3, 13, and 10? Just one. So that means 6 is the biggest. Okay, we've talked about that before. You have to make sure that you get the biggest factor out of there. Okay, so what I'm going to have you do is, first thing we're going to do is we're going to have one parenthesis and just take the 6 out of that. Just that. You cannot take an x out. Everybody clear on that? 60 doesn't have an x. So 18 divided by 6 is going to be 3x. 78 divided by 6, I just did that on a calculator, that's minus 13x. And 60 divided by 6 is going to be 10 like that. So you have to start the problem that way. Then we're going to do kind of a trial and error approach on this trinomial. And I think I got, that needs to be a square. So I wrote that wrong. Okay, so we got that. I've taken the 6 out. Now what we're going to do on this one is, I'm not going to really make a chart on this. I'm going to look at that as the first term. I'm going to look at that as the last term, and I'm just going to try to do it by trial and error. Okay, so when I do this, I'm going to bring down the 6. That's a part of my answer. Then I'm going to draw 2 parentheses. Okay, so the last type of problem we look at in this section is take out common factors, then proceed. Okay, so tell me what I would have to use for the first term. There's only one thing. 3x times x, right? Okay, you're looking for 2 numbers that multiply to give 3x squared. So the only thing that could be is 3x and x. That's it, right? That's nice. What are the possibilities for 10? 1 and 10, 2 and 5. Let's try close. Let's try 2 and 5. Let's see if we can get that from there. Just put it in. Okay? Now what we want to look at is that term right there is going to be 2x when you multiply it. The outer term is going to be 15x when we multiply. What we're after is a negative 13x. So that'll work, won't it? What is what? What's negative?
5.
The 15 is going to be the negative one, and then the 2 is going to be positive, right? So that means that if you're getting a positive 2, that has to be positive. If you want a negative 15, it's the outer one that has to be negative. So that would be the answer to the problem right there. That's it. So the only thing that's different on that is you take the common factor out, then you proceed. And this is incredibly important, and students do not pay attention to this as good as they need to. When you take out like any number, make sure it's right. You have the power to tell that you've taken out the biggest factor, so do it. Because if you don't, then you're going to create a very difficult situation for yourself. So take out the biggest. Okay, is there any questions about that with anybody? Does that make sense? Okay, yes.
One quick question. So when you're adding up like the 2x and the negative 15x, normally wouldn't the 2x's be like an x squared? So that wouldn't match the...
Not on this one, because we're trying to get when we multiply, we want x times x to be x squared. The last problem, I think we had an x to the 4th. That's why we had x squared and x squared.
Okay.
That's the idea, okay? Okay, so let's take a look at this one. This is a big messy one. This almost looks like the first problem that was on your quiz. It's not, it's a little different, but you start this the same way. So let's look at 33, 60, and 12. And let's see if we can figure out the biggest factor on that to begin with. Okay, so does anything come to mind?
6?
6 doesn't go into 33. That's a good idea, though.
Only 3.
Probably 3. Okay, that's what I'm thinking. Probably 3. Okay, let's try it. 33 divided by 3 is 11. 60 divided by 3 is 20. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Okay, now look at the results. Is there any number that goes into 11, 20, and 4 at the same time? Just one. Just one. That means we succeeded. 3 is the biggest. Does everybody understand that? That's a really, really important thing to think about. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the 3 out and have a parenthesis. But the other thing, and we've learned this, do you have an x in every position?
Yes.
What comes out?
X
X squared, the one with the smallest exponent. Not just an x squared. Okay, do you have a y in every position?
Yes.
It's a tie, right? So what comes out?
Y squared.
Y squared. If it's a tie, then just take that out. Okay, so you're going to have that, and that's your first step, is to figure out that common factor. Now, you can proceed by filling that in your head if you want to, or you can do this. I like to do this sometimes on this problem, is if you just went through and divided every term in the original problem by 3x to the second y to the second, it takes some of the guesswork out for some students, so I'm going to do that. Okay, so 33 divided by 3 is 11. The difference between 4 and 2 is 2, so that's x squared, and the y squareds cross out. So if you do it that way, you're not going to go wrong, okay? And then we do 60 over 3 is 20. The difference between 3 and 2 is 1, so that's an x. And then the y squareds cross out like that. Okay, here we have 12 over 3 is 4, and both the x's and y's cross out. Okay, now that's what we've learned to do, and we've been working on that a little bit. So now we've got that. Okay, now what you want to do now is try to factor that. You're going to proceed with the factoring to finish that up. Okay, so we want to go ahead and do this now. So that's a part of your answer. Don't forget about your common factor. And then let's just kind of put this one together now. Okay, this is not too bad. What would you use for the 11x squared? 11x and x. That's great. See, that's awesome. If you only have one possibility, it makes it a lot easier. Okay, now we've got the 4, so we could either go 1 and 4, or we could go 2 and 2. Okay, I'm inclined to go 2 and 2, so let's try that. Okay, now when we do this visual, that's going to be a 2x. The outer term is going to be a 22x, and what we're trying to get out of this is a plus 20x. So is that going to work? We got it. See, if you do that visual, it makes it easy to see that pattern. So that means we'd have to have a plus with the 22 and a minus with the 2 like that. Okay? So now, that 2x is the inner term. It needs to be negative, so the negative goes there to make that. The outer term gives you positive 22, so that must be positive. And there's your answer to your problem. Okay, like that. Just take out factors and then proceed. Don't just, a lot of students when they're learning this, they always draw 2 parentheses. And that's a bad habit. So look for a common factor, then proceed. You'll never get them unless you do it that way, okay? Okay, so I think that's all I got there. Okay, so one of the things I just wanted to mention, if you're going to higher math, most of you are going to college algebra, maybe STEM majors, maybe trig or calculus, something like that. Factoring is everywhere. It shows up like everywhere. So if a student doesn't know their factoring very well, they pay for it. Okay, so this is real important. One thing that will help you guys, though, is almost everything we do from the rest of the semester has factoring in it, so you'll get good at it. I mean, I'm confident that that will happen because it always does, as long as you do your homework. Okay? All right. So let me close this off, and then we'll go ahead.